Hey everyone, in this video I'm continuing my John Constantine Hellblazer coverage. In this volume we're going to see what was going on when Swamp Thing took over Constantine's body, what was Constantine's consciousness up to. We're going to learn the Newcastle incident that was alluded to. We're going to finally see the events of that. We're going to have John then confronting Nergal and see the aftermath of that. We're going to have the annual issue where we are going to see one of John's supposed ancestors from a long time ago, and then we're going to have the two-issue, the Horrorist storyline, which is pretty horrifying. All right, let's dive into it. Hellblazer Volume 2. Hellblazer Volume 2, The Devil You Know, written by Jamie Delano, art by David Lloyd, Richard Piers Rayney, Mark Buckingham, Bryan Talbot, Mike Hoffman, and Dean Motter. This volume will cover Hellblazer issues 10 through 13, as well as the Hellblazer Annual, and the two-issue miniseries called The Horrorist. Hellblazer, Issue 10, Sex and Death. So at the end of last volume, in some issues of Swamp Thing, we saw that Swamp Thing took over Constantine's body so that he could impregnate his wife, Abby. Now, while Swamp Thing had taken over Constantine's body, Constantine's mind was traveling the astral plane. So we will now see what that was like. So Constantine, in the astral plane, pictures himself as a sperm flying through space. So the events that are happening right now are happening in the period of time when Swamp Thing was still in control of Constantine's body, and him and Abby were still going at it. So Constantine's consciousness in the astral plane is traveling around, and he decides to fly over to Glastonbury to check in on his friend Zed and what the Resurrection Crusade is up to with her. So we see the Resurrection Crusade are in the middle of a disturbing ceremony where they are calling down an angel that will mate with Zed, who now they are referring to as the Mary, where they hope that she will give birth to Christ. So, in the middle of this ceremony, the angel comes down, and it begins to try and have intercourse with Zed. But Zed, last volume, had intercourse with John, and John was infected with demon blood from this Nergal. So the angel senses the taint of this demon blood, and he rejects Zed. And the angel is wrathful and angry by this. And as John watches, it appears that the heavens kill all the Resurrection Crusade members here, along with Zed. Although you never really know with these things, they might still be alive. We'll see. John, watching this from the astral plane, is horrified, and he travels on. John, from within the astral plane, sees the demon Nergal there, the one that he made the deal with. And Nergal is ecstatic. He feels like he has won. The Resurrection Crusade are being destroyed, and it appears like the prophecy will not be fulfilled. Once again, that prophecy was, at the winter solstice, a conjunction between nature and supernature, a birth. A child will be born with a healing power in this realm. But thanks to Constantine, this seems like it will not pass, and the balance between heaven and hell will continue. However, soon Nergal notices a disturbance within the green. He discovers that Swamp Thing is mating with Constantine's body, and Constantine is infected with Nergal's own blood, and thereby the prophecy is being fulfilled through this. Nergal becomes pissed, and within the astral plane he turns to Constantine, and he orders his hellhounds to destroy him. So Constantine, now within the astral plane, begins to try and run. And traveling within the astral plane is really trippy. John is flying and he's swimming under the sea. At one point, a whale tries to attack him. Eventually, John feels like the only place he can be safe is back in his own body in the real world. So John, within the astral plane, begins to swim towards the green, making his way to his own body again. He finally gets there and he forces Swamp Thing out of it. Unfortunately, though, he does this right in the middle of Swamp Thing and Abby making love. So all of a sudden, right in the middle of it, Constantine wakes up. Abby, she says, "Oh, Alec, I love you." And Constantine, now awake, says, Oh dear, look, I'm not sure how to tell you this, darling, but it's not him anymore, it's me. I had to come back, a bit sudden-like, sorry." Abby screams, I knew it! You're vile, you're filthy, you've just manipulated me, used me, you sicken me, John tries to apologize, saying, "I'm sorry, really, I mean it, but I honestly couldn't help it. This demon was chasing me through the green, see? I had to get help." Abby replies, "Get out of my sight, I hate you. You blight everything you touch." John to this says, "Well, thanks for the memory, darling." Swamp Thing, now reformed his swamp body, says to Constantine, "Constantine?" John replies, "Look, I tried to tell her I was sorry, but she's a bit upset." Swamp Thing to this says, "Yes, you should go now. We have no further business." Constantine asks, "What about that bloody demon? I hope you mangled him." Swamp Thing to this says, "No, he did not wish to fight. He feared me. He said that you should tremble till he chose his hour. He said, 'Remember Newcastle.'" As John heads home, those words, "Remember Newcastle," shake him. He returns to his flat in London, and he opens the door, and he finds his landlady, Miss McGuire, dead, as well as the other tenant in the building, all brutally murdered by Nergal. Miss McGuire's head is decapitated and on a spike. Constantine, he then realizes the significance of Nergal's words, "Remember Newcastle." John, he digs through his records for a certain file. He finds it. The file name reads, Newcastle, 1978. We will now learn what finally went down in Newcastle all those years ago. Hellblazer, Issue 11, Newcastle, A Taste of Things to Come. John Constantine returns to the city of Newcastle, trying to remember back to the incident that shaped him 10 years ago. He stands outside the old Casanova Club before the bombing, and he reflects on his past. 10 years ago, in 1978, John and his Newcastle crew were at this club. They came together as people with a shared interest in the occult, but they were also part of a band. That's right, Constantine was in a band. They were called the Mucous Membrane, and they were new wave. Their most popular song was called Venus of the Hard Cell. So they were a band, and they were an occult team. The members of this team were John Constantine himself, Frank North, Judith, Anne Marie, the lonely psychic. She was fat, 40, and secretly in love with John. She would eventually become a nun after this incident, but not back then. There was Richie Simpson, the computer freak. There was Gary Lester and Benjamin Cox. So John and his band had a gig at this Casanova Club, courtesy of its proprietor, a man named Alex Logue. Alex was known in occult circles as a sex and drugs magician, abusing his power for lust and addictions. After their gig, John and his group had been invited to a party at the club. It's an odd scene once they arrive, though. It's disgusting. There's all this gore around. Just dead, bloodied up, squished bodies. And in that club, they find the proprietor's daughter, a young girl named Astra Logue. They approach the girl and she freaks out. She yells, "Don't touch me! I won't do it anymore! I don't like it!" John tries to calm her down, saying, Okay, it's me, John, and Gary from the band. You remember?" Gary asks Astra, "What happened? What happened to your dad?" Astra answers, "Didn't you hear it? The Norfall thing got him. The Norfall thing, the Norfall thing, the Norfall thing." John tells the group he's going to try and hypnotize the girl so they can find out what happened here. By questioning the girl through her hypnotism, they learn that the amateur occultist and nightclub owner, Alex Logue, that hired them, well, he held a series of tantric sex rituals in the cellar of his establishment. And very disturbingly, he forced his young daughter, Astra, to partake in these rituals. And this experience traumatized her so greatly that she inadvertently conjured up this Norfall thing, this terror elemental, to protect her. This Norfall thing has a horrifically odd appearance. It's described as partly a giant dog and partly a monkey, and it wears its internal organs on the outside of its skin, including its heart, muscles, veins, and genitalia. Once Astra conjured this Norfall thing, it slaughtered everyone in the room, sparing only Astra. Once the girl finishes telling them her story, John, with magic, puts her to sleep, saying, "Sleep now, girl, and forget. When you wake up, the Norfall thing will be gone. I promise." John and his team then discuss how they should handle this. Frank North suggests that they just burn this club to the ground. John suggests another idea, though. He says they have to fight fire with fire. The Norfall thing is powerful and dangerous, but it's her, Astra's, creation, and it needs her to inspire it. So while she is in a trance, it should stay reasonably quiet as long as no one disturbs it. John then says what they have to do is raise a really powerful demon to then destroy the Norfall thing, hence fighting fire with fire. Some of them are against this. Frank North says, "No way, Jose, one hell beast is plenty." But some of the others go along with John's idea. John says some of his supplies are in the van, someone's gotta get it, and he has a book called the Grimorium Verum, and it's got all the ritual incantations spelled out like ABC, and with that he can summon the correct demon to fight the Norfall thing. As they are debating, they hear one of the members on their team, Ben Cox, screaming in the cellar. They rush down and see the Norfall thing demonic monster attacking him. They yank Ben free, and they fire some shotgun blasts into the beast, and retreat into the other room. John asks Ben, "Jesus, Ben, what were you doing down there?" Ben answers, I was gonna take its picture. Ben is so scared now, he has developed a stutter. John tells the rest of the group, "All right, that settles it. I'm going to do it. Who's with me?" Judith, Anne-Marie, and Gary all agree to help John. Frank and Richie refuse, though, and Ben is still too scared to do anything. So John tells Richie to take Ben outside and look after him, and John tells Frank to rig up a gas tank outside to blow this place to hell if he doesn't come out. John then tells Anne-Marie to stay with the girl, Astra. Watch over her. John's gonna put her under a protective circle upstairs, and she'll be fine as long as she doesn't come out of it. John tells Judith to come with him, they need to prepare, and then Gary asks John, "What about me?" John tells Gary, "Oh yeah, Gaz, you better go outside and see if you can catch me a black cat, man, and I want it alive." John is just telling Gary this as an excuse to get him out of the way for a while. After some time passes, John manages to perform the ritual. Part of the incantations is some gibberish mixed in, along with John saying, "By this talisman and this naming character inscribed in blood with the pen of the art, I wake you, Sagatana. I conjure thee, appear in human form, fair and agreeable, without noise or inconvenience, in order to obey my will. Come on, you bastard, where are you?" Once John finishes the ritual, he is confused. It doesn't seem like it worked, but he followed the recipe in the book. He said the words he was supposed to say. As it turns out, John said something incorrect. Perhaps the book was wrong, or maybe he just messed up, but he summoned the wrong demon. He actually summoned Nergal, the demon that we saw John confronting over the last several issues. So while John here thought that his summoning didn't work, it in fact did. Upstairs, Anne-Marie is watching over Astra. She is sitting inside the protective circle, but then Nergal appears before her as a vision of John Constantine, and Anne-Marie, she has a crush on John, and John tempts her to leave the protective circle. The vision of John playing upon her lust for him. The vision of John says to Anne-Marie, "Come to me, Anne-Marie, I want you. Kiss me, Anne-Marie. Fold me into your tight, warm flesh. Embrace me. Anne-Marie, entranced, she leaves the protective circle, and once she does, she gets showered with acid. The demon as John then says to her, "Run and get thee to a nunnery." Anne-Marie then runs and she jumps out the window, breaking the glass and following down below. Downstairs, John attempts to do the ritual again, but he is interrupted by Astra. Astra walks down the stairs. John is surprised. He says, "Astra, Christ, what are you doing here? Get out quickly." Astra claims she heard them calling her, but of course they did not. John yells for Astra to go back upstairs. It's not safe here yet. He also questions, "Where is Anne-Marie?" Astra answers, "Anne-Marie jumped out the window." Due to Astra being awake again, her demon protector, the Norfall thing, arrives in the room. Astra, she falls to the floor. Gary wants to go and grab her, but John forbids it, saying, "Stop! Nobody breaks the circle, whatever happens. They are within their own protective circle there, and if they were to cross it, the Norfall thing could attack them. So they just have to stand there behind the protective incantation circle and watch." They watch as the Norfall thing beast approaches Astra, and to their surprise, Astra rips the Norfall thing creature to pieces, killing it. It turns out that the ritual had worked, indirectly, sort of. Astra was now a host to another demon. That demon is actually Nergal, but John does not know this at this point in time. With the Norfall thing dead, John now attempts to command the demon to leave Astra's body unharmed. John refers to the demon by the incorrect name that he believes he summoned. He says, "Sagatana, Duke of Darkness and Despair, I command you under heaven's fire, leave the girl unharmed and submit to my instruction." Nergal within Astra says, "I submit to you? Ha!" Nergal then explains that he had no obligation to defeat this other monster, and has no obligation now to leave the girl. He says, "I owe your impotent antique magic no allegiance whatsoever." John, he just yells back at the demon, "Leave her now!" Nergal decides to oblige with John's wishes anyway. So all of a sudden, Astra seemingly vomits out a terrible mass of flesh, and that mass of flesh grows into a horror before them. Nergal, as this disgusting monster, says, "You are pathetic, Constantine. Wallowing in ignorance, you seek to constrain me? Know you not the root of all power is in naming, and you have no conception of who I am?" Constantine is confused. He says, "But," Nergal continues, "the character you described was mine, but Sagatana is not the name that fits, and thus your invocation lacked the weight of magical imperative." John questions, "So then why did you come, chum?" Nergal answers, "Because it greatly pleasures me to chasten arrogance and corrode the brass of vanity. It's with the witless of your sort that hell enjoys its finest sport. And now, since I have freely pranced and danced according to your futile art, justice decrees that I should claim my fee. I'll take this child of tortured heart to ease me through eternity." John pleads with the demon, "No, I screwed up. Take me if you must." The demon answers, "You? No, you are mine already, and your friends, fresh blooms to be anticipated, plucked according to my whim. I want her now. There is no negotiation, although as a special dispensation if you insist. I give you leave. Accompany her below. Step forward, hero, if you would conquer fear and fully comprehend the meaning of the words. Abandon hope, all ye who enter." So the demon, he is going to take Astra, but he will allow John the opportunity to accompany her down to hell if he wishes, so that he can see her away. While this is going on, Judith and Gary ran outside to join the others, and they all decided it is time to set the building ablaze, thinking that there's no way John is going to be able to come back. So as John's crew is preparing to blow the building up and light it aflame, John is slowly starting to walk down to hell with the girl. But John feels he can't do it. He can't go down there. No one could willingly walk into this place. He has to try a spell. Try his blasting wand. What's left to lose? All of a sudden, John's crew lights the building aflame. It blows. John feels the earth shaking. He urges Astra to run with him. He grabs her arm, and he begins booking it. John is running. He is holding Astra's arm as he goes, trying to drag her with him. The building's inflamed, it's shaking, it's blowing up. And John, he manages to run out the building and outside to his friends. But to John's horror, as he looks behind, Astra is not with him. Only her arm is. It got severed and ripped off during the blast, and John just brought that with him. John, he screams out, "No!" Nergal, he then yells and warns the others, "Weep now, children, rant and tear your hair. Remember, hell is your eventual home. Consider this a taste of things to come." It has been 10 years since that day, and John feels he is all to blame for what happened. It all lies with him. Each of his friends had parted ways, changed by the events of that day. Anne-Marie, she became a nun, and Ben, he got a stutter, and Gary, he turned to drugs. Richie became obsessed with computers, and Judith went to work with abused children, and Frank, he went off biking around the world. And John, he spent the next 2 years in a mental institution called Ravenscar, a secure facility for the dangerously deranged. And just as the demon promised, hell took all of them, every one. John, now in the current day, remembers all these events. He laments that we all make mistakes. John did, for sure. But John thinks the demon finally made a mistake too. He finally told him his name, Nergal. Nergal. John now vows to get his revenge, somehow. Hellblazer, Issue 12, The Devil You Know. The demon Nergal is pissed at John for what he pulled with Swamp Thing. So he wants revenge. He wants to kill John. And he is searching high and low for him. But John has hidden himself, hiding close to the very place where he first encountered Nergal in Newcastle. John has spent a week held up in a trailer, hiding behind a protection circle which he has drawn on the ground, which hides his location from the demon. The problem is, though, John has been in this trailer for a week, and he has gathered no information that can help him fight Nergal. And now, Nergal's blood within his body is starting to have some side effects, and John is slowly dying. The blood is causing John to sweat profusely and generate hives on his face. As John searches the pockets of his coat for a cigarette, he finds an old gas bill that he shoved in his coat pocket. John reads the gas bill and is surprised that apparently he owes 20,000 pounds for a gas bill? John is shocked. He comments, "They've got to be joking. Hold on, what's this up here?" As John inspects the bill, he sees a note written on his gas bill that reads, "Constantine, you treacherous bastard. I can get into your bank account too. Phone this number, pronto. R.S." Constantine thinks on it. R.S. John realizes that his friend, Richie Simpson, is still alive, albeit trapped in cyberspace. Richie must have hacked into his gas bill and wrote this message for him to find. John, excited, phones the phone number that Richie told him to contact him at. The phone rings and then it picks up. John says, hello? Are you there, mate?" Richie answers, "John, is that you? I can't be so sure. So many hallucinations. Every second, a lifetime." John asks if he's alright. Richie answers, "All right. How can I be all right when I'm lost in here? I'm scared, I'm lonely. You left me too long. Why'd you do it, John?" John answers, "Couldn't be helped, mate. You got too close to heaven or whatever it was, and your body fritzed, went up in smoke." John, he couldn't let Richie come back because he got too close to the Resurrection Crusade, Tongues of Fire's databases, and it caused Richie's body to be destroyed. Well, the two of them talk further and start devising a plan to maybe get Richie somehow back to reality. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Nergal is still searching for Constantine and unable to find him. Nergal is then visited by two demons named Agony and Ecstasy. They explain they are slave twins of the Inquisition. These slave twins explain that Lucifer, Beelzebub, and Belial call Nergal to account. The triumvirate of Hades expects Nergal to collect Constantine's soul by dawn. Hell does not suffer failure lightly, and even a Duke of Mendacity like Nergal is not given special treatment. So Nergal's in a little bit of some hot water. He's got to get Constantine's soul now, or he's going to get in trouble. Meanwhile, Richie Simpson gets some special computer equipment delivered to John's location. And after they set it all up, John hooks himself up to the machines and projects himself into cyberspace. And within cyberspace, John and Richie can now talk face to face. John tells Richie that he has managed to track down the demon that they encountered all those years ago in the Newcastle incident. And John, thanks to the help of Richie, now has devised a way to stop him. And in exchange for Richie's help, John promises to help find his friend a new body for him to take over. Richie, he's willing to help. It's not like he has much of a choice, anyway. We jump back over to Nergal. It is now dawn, and he has failed to collect Constantine's soul, still unaware of his location. So the demons, Agony and Ecstasy, have returned to collect Nergal and bring Nergal back to the demons in charge of Hell. They tell Nergal that he will accompany them and hear decreed the judgment that Hell's assembled ministers have agreed. Nergal, he tries to talk his way out of this punishment, to give himself more time, but just at that moment, Constantine from within cyberspace manages to contact Nergal, giving him a message. John tells Nergal, Nergal, I'm growing old waiting for you. Are you afraid of me? Come to Newcastle and taste defeat. Nergal, happy to receive this message, tells Agony and Ecstasy, he dares to challenge me. Postpone your duty, Inquisitors. Release me. Agony and Ecstasy agree. They say, it seems the jester has a taste for sport. We'll wait until the contest has been fought. And they will reserve their judgment for the loser. Nergal then suddenly appears in John's trailer that he has been hiding out in. John is still currently hooked up to the computer, and his mind is in cyberspace. Nergal begins standing over John, and he is going to kill him. However, he soon realizes that the soul inhabiting John's body is not of John Constantine, it is instead Richie. Richie is now in control of John's body in the real world, and John is in the computer, within the astral realm. John, from within the computer speakers, speaks to Nergal saying, "Close, mate, but no cigar. Lesson number 1, the root of all power is naming. You taught me that. If you want me, you have to get it right." Nergal, confused, says, "Where are you? I cannot feel your presence on any of the natural planes. Are you hiding in this machinery? I mean to have you, Constantine." John says, "You'd better come in and get me then, because I'm sure as hell not coming out." So Nergal, he agrees. He is going to go within the machine to retrieve John's soul. Richie, in Constantine's body, hooks Nergal up to the machine. And soon, Nergal's consciousness goes into the electronic reality. Once Nergal is in the machine, he taunts, saying, "Do you think that hiding in this playground will help you conquer me?" Constantine replies, in a word, "Yes." Nergal begins chasing John through cyberspace. John, he follows a certain red path that was laid out by Richie for him. So John, he's following this path, and Nergal is closing in on him. Finally, John is approaching where he needs to be for their plan to work. Within cyberspace, within this astral realm, they are approaching what John refers to as the edge of heaven. This is where Richie was traveling to many issues ago when his body got fried as he flew too close to it. John, he then yells for Richie to make his move. Richie does, and Nergal is suddenly horrified to learn where he is. This edge of heaven is what the tongues of fire were protecting, and this effect of heaven's light destroys Nergal's soul, and he dies, all while John is left unscathed as Richie pulled him back. Well, with Nergal dead, it seems like John has won. John asks Richie what happened to Nergal's body there in the real world. Did it spontaneously combust like his did? Richie answers, "No, John, I unplugged it." John is a little confused why Richie would have done that. Well, doesn't matter. John, he's ready to go back into his body, but Richie has other plans now. He does not want to be trapped in cyberspace once again. So, he's planning on staying in John's body. Richie gives the bad news to John, saying, "I'm just doing a bit of body snatching. I'm sorry, John, but you can't expect me to go back in there voluntarily. You're being evicted." John is surprised at his friend betraying him. He says, "Nah, Richie, come on." Richie says, "And who knows what mischief you might get up to if I let you into the demon's empty shell. No, the world will be a safer place with you in there." John, though, he starts making the argument that, his body was dying. He says, "I mean, suit yourself, mate. The body's totally crooked anyway. In case you hadn't noticed, it's dying, mate. Riddled with disease. Why else do you think I'd chance a crazy stunt like this? I give you 3 days at most. Look, your best chance has got to be in the demon's body. What have you got to lose? Think of the power, Richie. You could do anything." Richie, he thinks on it, and damn, Constantine's right. His body's dying from the demon's blood within it. He's not going to live much longer if he stays in here, but if he jumps into Nergal's body, maybe he has a chance. Alright. Richie, he enters the demon's body and allows John to return back in his own body. Richie, now into Nergal's body, is getting a feel for it. John asks, "What's it like in there?" Richie answers, "Oh, it's huge and dark, like a shipwreck at the bottom of the ocean's deepest trench, and there are snagging hooks which tear me." Richie, at first, he doesn't like it, but then all of a sudden he starts feeling the phenomenal powers the body gives him. Richie then says to John, "But as this body dies, I build another more suited to my needs and live. Constantine, if you only knew, with the energy that's coursing through me, I could rule the world." John lets out a sigh, saying, "Oh, bloody hell." "So, Richie, old mate, are you a good guy or a bad guy?" Richie answers, "I don't know. I haven't decided yet." Before Richie can continue exploring his new body, the other demons, Agony and Ecstasy, return. The demons tell John, "The Lords of Hell decree that by the rules of engagement, you have achieved victory. But do not think because this once you've vanquished a senile demon, you would be so fortunate again." So John is a little surprised, meaning he's not gonna die now? He asks, "You mean that's it? I can go?" The demons tell him, "Of course. Hell is eternal, and we know that when your time in this place is over, you'll join us, willingly in the other." Richie, meanwhile, will not be allowed to roam free in the demon's body. So instead, they take him away to hell. They tell him, "You will be committed to our custody and accompany us below, where under torment you must spend at least 10,000 years discovering the 1,000,000 degrees of agony and ecstasy." In the aftermath of these events, John, he feels great. He's no longer dying from that demon blood. And he also feels like the weight on his shoulders has been lifted. The 10 years of guilt for what happened in Newcastle is kind of gone. And now, all that lies ahead for John is the future. John, he thinks to himself, "I sought out my demon and conquered him. Now if this species is going to have any chance of survival, we all have to face the demons inside us. We have to turn inwards enter the siege, perilous and wrestle. It's not those grotesque, tired institutions of heaven and hell that are the problem. It's the devil we know. And John says this as he looks at himself in a mirror. Hellblazer issue 13, On the Beach. In the aftermath of defeating Nergal, John Constantine decides to make a visit to a seaside resort where his family used to visit when he was just a child. John hopes he can use this time to relax and reflect here and try not to think about all the things he has just been through. As John quietly sits on the beach, he starts having a dream. He dreams of a nuclear power plant nearby having a meltdown, and the radiation kills all the people on the beach and the wildlife, leaving only John and a young woman left alive. Despite their radiation poisoning, the two of them attempt to conceive a child, resulting in a mutant baby, which appears to be a two-headed seal. The woman dies during childbirth, and the baby crawls out on the beach and is pecked to death by skeletal birds. John, now a skeleton himself, follows the birds into the sea and sinks below the surface. John, he then wakes up screaming from this dream, and he comments to himself, "Constantine, my old mate, you've got to do something about these bloody nightmares, or sooner or later they're going to kill you." Now, what does this dream mean? I don't know. Something about immortality or something, I think. Anyway, whatever. Moving on. Hellblazer Annual number 1 from 1989. This story is set in the year 1982, so it is about 4 years after the Newcastle incident, and about 6 years before the events of Hellblazer issue 1. And Constantine has been in and out of the Ravenscar mental ward facility. Having then been released for the 4th time, he is teetering on the edge of another nervous breakdown. As he wanders the London streets, he runs into an old friend of his named Martin Peters. Martin Peters used to be a member of a band called the Hopeless Heroines, just like John used to be a member of a band called Mucous Membrane. John asks if the band is still going. Martin says they're not. A couple of them died and the rest burned out. The two of them drink and drive for a bit, and Martin asks John, "Hey, I remember you guys making one of those music videos back in 77 or 78, right before music video really took off." Well, Martin tells John if John can find the videotape and he still has the copyright on it, they could make some money off of it. Sell it to one of the TV networks. There'd be cash in it, not a fortune, but solid money. Nostalgia is really big right now. John says he'll look for the tape. He then wanders around, drinking some more on the London streets. He almost gets arrested for being a drunk, but a strange woman comes to his aid. The woman is odd. She speaks of a chained goddess and long-dead warrior queens. The two of them retire to John's flat and spend the night together. And in the morning, Constantine is alone. And as Constantine is alone, he then sleeps again. And he has a trippy dream of a supposed ancient ancestor of his named King Constantine. So we go back now to medieval times, to the time of Arthurian legend, to the end of the reign of King Constantine. We see this king as a decrepit old man that lives in a tower. He only has one human arm, and the right one is a silver replacement. And as he yells, he spits blood from his mouth. It's really gross. Constantine yells for all of his religious followers to get out and go. Constantine rules over a Christian kingdom, but he is secretly still a pagan. Once Constantine kicks everyone out, he goes deep into the cellar of his tower, and he talks to the decapitated head of the wizard Merlin. Even though Merlin's head is decapitated, he is somehow still alive and speaks. Merlin, he wishes to die and finally get to go into the other world, but Constantine refuses. Before Constantine will let Merlin pass on, he demands that Merlin tell Constantine the story of his own life. He tells Merlin, "Sing me my life, great Merlin, and if it is a good song, sung with fine poetry in the old way, I will unchain your soul and let it swim at last to the other world." Merlin, not seeing a way out of this, begins to tell the tale. He says, "Hear this noble song I sing, the song of great Constantine the king, Lord of Demonia and the western lands, inheritor of Arthur's crown, cunning man, priest. I cannot. I am tired. Too many years these worms have choked me. My power is fly-blown as battlefield meat." Constantine, spitting blood, yells at the severed head of Merlin, saying, "Sing it! Do not enrage me, or you'll perch atop that rusting spike long after I am gone. Start at the beginning. Tell of the dream of Arthur, the broken king." Sigh, Merlin continues telling the tale. Back when King Arthur was still alive, he called Merlin to his side, and he told Merlin of a terrible dream he had, where he was killed by an old crone who turned into a swine, and then feasted on his innards. Later on, eventually Arthur was killed, and the downfall of Camelot took place. So Merlin then sought out the young boy king, Constantine, who would replace Merlin as king. Merlin guided Constantine for many years in the ways of war, politics, and magic. The common folk referred to Constantine as Arthur returned, due to all of his many military victories. They say that Constantine glowed with the power of the kings, and that he even wielded the sword Excalibur, although some doubted if it was actually Excalibur. Constantine, he retained his faith in the pagan gods of the land, and he was intolerant of the many monks who worshipped the one god, otherwise known as the Christian god. Constantine, he did not like the Christians. One day, a Christian monk confronted Constantine and yelled at him, saying, "Sorcerer, your murderous serpent darts of hell shall not prevail against the one God, whose light saves this benighted world." So Constantine chopped the monk's head off. Constantine, he followed Merlin's ways for quite some time, but he wanted to explore the unknown world and learn more than Merlin would be able to teach him. So Constantine, he went to sea. At sea, he lost his arm to Pictish pirates during a battle, and he was shipwrecked and saved by the fairy people. They replaced his arm with a silver one. He was then brought to their queen, known as Nimue, more commonly known as the Lady of the Lake from Arthurian legend. Constantine lived in a cave with the Lady of the Lake for a year. He found her beautiful. The two of them had a child together, and once the child was born, the Lady of the Lake told him, "Take him, our gift to the world as we leave." Constantine wanted to go with her, but the Lady of the Lake refused, saying, "No, you are a man in the time of men. We are the last of the vanishing past. Remember us." So she abandoned Constantine, and Constantine returned home to his people, to Merlin, along with his son, who would be his heir. However, at the boy's 19th birthday, Constantine sacrificed his son to a being called the Mother, who would then prolong Constantine's life in return. The Mother is actually the Welsh goddess Cyrduin. She's a figure within Welsh mythology and modern paganism. Cyrduin is often associated with rebirth, transformation, and inspiration, and she possesses a magic cauldron capable of healing and resurrecting those placed inside of it. She is the source of Constantine's longevity due to the blood sacrifice he made to her. Constantine continued to lead his kingdom, but he was plagued on all sides by the Christians, who were trying to spread their faith through force. Constantine fought them off over the years best he could. Life went on. Constantine even had another son, but he also uncaringly sacrificed that one to the mother as well once the boy was of age. Thus rejuvenated once again, Constantine returned back to his people at a place called Ravenscar, his veins afire with dragon flame and wild laughter on his breath. Despite his relentless use of bloodshed and slaughter, Constantine could not stem the rising tide of Christianity, so he was ultimately compelled to accept the presence of the Christian faith within his realm, even going so far as to convert to the one God religion himself. This conversion to Christianity was a ruse, though. It brought peace, but Constantine, even though he was now Christian, secretly continued to preserve the worship of the goddess, while simultaneously enhancing his own reputation throughout the land, with hopes of one day being canonized as a saint, where he could live on in a way and be immortal. Churches, they were constructed in his kingdom, but they were constructed on ancient standing stones at pagan holy sites, with sacrificial blood mixed into the mortar. Temples built on the dragon places so that the worship was not wasted. Merlin, he aptly remarked while telling this tale, no priests of that empire understood. Their one god had not conquered, but been seduced. And though their power may last 10,000 years, still they must fail to be complete, while writhes the dragon beneath their feet. Merlin, now finally finished this tale, gets his reward. Constantine kicks Merlin's head into the water, letting him drown and fully die. Constantine then raises his arms and says, "Come then, lady, I am ready. Take me home." A dragon then erupts from the ground beneath him to carry him off to see the mother where he will finally die. As the priests see Constantine being carried away by the dragon, they yell, "God save us, it carries him away." No, he vanquishes it, protecting us, his flock. Truly the Father was a fearsome warrior, come late to the service of our Father, but by this act all men shall know him true martyr to the faith, and his name shall be recorded throughout time in churches founded on this raven scar as Holy Constantine, a fierce and bloody saint. So Constantine would be remembered as a saint, making him in a way immortal, showing that there was more than one way to live forever. Constantine returned to the mother to accept death, and said to her, "Mother, I have come. All the magic has been done. I did it. Constantine, me, the king that was, and now will ever be." Back in the current day now, John wakes from this dream of his ancient ancestor, and he looks through some old boxes in some sort of storage facility. He then finds the videotape of his band, their music video. The Hellblazer annual then ends with us seeing some footage from this music video. Venus of the Hard Cell by Mucous Membrane. I'm not gonna sing it because, I'm gonna sing it bad, but here are some of the lyrics. Love, adventure, death, and glory, the short goodbye, the whispered story, one last glance at the chameleon dance, and into the dark across the park. I ain't no mark for the Venus of the Hard Cell. Say it. I ain't no mark for the Venus of the Hard Cell. Saints and sinners, raw beginners, lipstick traces and TV dinners, cigar smoke, bars and expensive new cars, the etc, etc, etc. Alright, you get it. Moving on. The final story in this volume is from a miniseries called The Horrorist. It was actually written in 1995, so many years later from all the earlier issues we were just going through, but it was collected in the trade paperback here. So the characterization of Constantine may be a little different than what we've seen so far. Okay, so let us begin. The Horrorist, Issue 1. A girl named Angel grew up in Mozambique in southern Africa. There, she witnessed the most unspeakable war crimes and atrocities. Later, a pair of Christian missionaries from the American Midwest adopted her and brought her back home to America. Angel, she was lovely and smart, but she kind of sucked the family dry. And the couple that adopted Angel, well, their other biological daughter, Kathy, she developed anorexia, and she started wasting away. So the father, Ray, feeling that Angel was to blame for this, tried to murder her. He took her down to the river, he strangled her, and weighed her body down with rocks. Ray then came home afterwards and ended up hanging himself. And the biological daughter, Kathy, she died shortly later, wasting away. Angel did not end up drowning in that river, though. She lived. She sort of became reborn. She became something called a horrorist. A horrorist is someone that redistributes pain by unveiling to people the suffering of others. Angel, she began traveling America's roadways, annihilating people's selfish existence by exposing them to the unfettered scope of true oppression, famine, and murder. She would do this through the form of altering reality. Her victims were too busy, too self-absorbed to care about what was going on in the rest of the world, so she exposed them to the true scope of human suffering, and she left many dead in her path. When our book opens, we see Angel, the horrorist, in a small town in America, sitting on a park bench. An old man named Clarence is watching some boys playing in the snow. Clarence comments to Angel, sitting on the bench, "Look at that. They ain't got a care in the world. Makes you kinda green, don't it? Kids, they don't feel the cold." Angel, not being fully able to control herself, says, "Their blood will freeze soon. Can't you hear them screaming?" Angel, she then covers her ears. Perhaps maybe unable to control her reality-altering powers, she makes landmines appear in the park. Landmines that might appear in her own war-torn country. And the boys there, just simply playing in the snow, somehow start exploding, dying from these landmines that Angel had created, reality-altered into existence. Clarence, he sees this. He is shocked by it. He drops to his knees. He starts having flashback to his own time in the war. He can't believe it. The horrors of war somehow just appeared in his small town, here in the snow, wiping these boys out. Clarence, he says, "This ain't right. This is bad. Bad evil can't happen here. Not in the USA." Angel, to this, says, "I'm sorry, Clarence, but you're wrong. It happens everywhere. Listen. Can't you hear the screaming?" Elsewhere, we see John Constantine. He is perhaps a little bit colder and darker and more emotionally numb and dead inside than we are maybe used to. Like I said, this book was written about 6 years or so after all the previous issues, so John's characterization might have changed within that time. But in the Horrorist, John really seems a next kind of level of messed up. John, he picks up a prostitute at a bar. The prostitute specializes in S&M. And they go back to her place, where John gets tied up, and the woman proceeds to whip him. John, he is so desperate to feel anything, as he feels so numb right now, that as he is being whipped, he yells, "Harder! Harder, you pathetic stiletto bitch! I still can't feel it!" The woman, she continues for a while, but eventually stops, saying, I can't, it's like flogging a dead horse." John, he then leaves, disappointed. He walks the city streets. He is here in America because he has learned of Angel's existence. He saw an image of her in a magazine that featured images from war-torn South Africa. And after seeing that image, he has now come here to find her, because he seems to know what she has become. He has become psychologically drawn to her in a way. He feels that Angel may finally be able to make him feel something, maybe help him regain some part of his own humanity. John, in order to help track Angel down, visits the photographer that took the picture of her in the magazine years ago. Through their conversation, John learns that Angel was adopted by a family in the American Midwest. John, he then flies to go meet that family, and he meets the mother that took Angel in. The mother tells John of her experience of how Angel sucked their family dry, and their other daughter got anorexia and died, and her husband tried to kill Angel and hung himself. John tells the traumatized woman that he still believes Angel is alive. After John leaves the woman's home, he continues his search for Angel. Elsewhere, we see Angel is hitchhiking. She gets picked up by a truck driver. As they are driving, Angel makes him see messed up images of people being transported on a train like prisoners. The truck driver is confused and horrified. Angel says, "They're cleansing the population." The two of them stop at a diner to eat. Elsewhere, we see Constantine seeing the story in the paper of the kids dying from the landmines. So John tracks down the old man Clarence from the beginning of the story. Clarence's wife explains that Clarence went outside for a walk. He hasn't been the same since the landmine incident. He keeps having flashbacks to the war. And he said that he couldn't stand the kids screaming no more. But the thing is, the kids have been quiet as mice all day. Constantine eventually finds Clarence on the street. Clarence douses himself in gasoline and lights himself on fire. The Horrorist, Issue 2. Constantine continues to search for Angel, and Angel continues to travel across America, causing more destruction and death, seemingly torching the minds of anyone who crosses her path by revealing to them the horrors of her African homeland. On the news, they report that the photographer that took the picture of Angel all those years ago, well, he stabbed out his own eyes, deciding he'd seen enough, and he killed himself. In a diner, a bigger woman is eating away her sorrows, and Angel makes her somehow witness the starving all over the world. A man in a motel room, he shoots and takes his own life, unable to face the images of hunting children in the streets. Eventually, finally, after all this destruction and all of Constantine's searching, Angel manages to cross paths with Constantine in this motel room. Constantine is surprised. He was looking for her, but she managed to find him. Constantine asks her, "So, Angel, what now? We gonna fight, or we gonna have sex?" Angel responds, "Which do you want?" John smokes a cigarette and says, "I heard a gunshot." Angel explains that the man in the other room killed himself. He couldn't stand the screaming. Nobody can once they hear it. "Can you hear it, John?" John answers, "Of course I can. It used to be louder, but you get used to it, don't you? You learn to tune it out. These days it's like mild tinnitus, a distant ringing in the ears. No big deal, not at all. You'll have to try harder than that, Angel." John, he then sits down. He tells Angel, "Look, kid, I'm way too old for any trembling virgin shit. I've spent my whole life living in this nightmare. I'm immune to horrors. They're like cheap pornography. They just don't do it for me anymore." Angel tries to comfort John, saying, "You're lonely. Most people are afraid of misery and pain. They're happiest when the bad stuff happens far away from them." John to this says, "Well then call me kinky, but I need an edge. Fear's the fuel that drives the human engine, innit? It's what keeps us ugly, selfish scumbags going. Without fear, we don't know we're alive. But maybe you wouldn't understand that, Angel. You're not one of us." Angel responds, "No, not one of you. All of you." John to this replies, "Oh, come on, spare us the universal victim messiah shtick. I've been following you, remember? I've seen the roadkill that you've splattered along the way. Admit it, you just get off messing people up. I know what you are. You're a bleeding horrorist, a redistributor of suffering, perpetrating revolutionary outrage in the cozy heartlands of oppression and complacency, but that's cool. There's worse things you could be. You could be a cold, dead-veined old hell junkie like me, a burnt-out tourist voyeur. Yeah, make a good epitaph, wouldn't it? John Constantine. He came, he saw, he took some bloody pictures." After some more talking, John eventually asks Angel to show him, make him feel. And over the next 6 or 7 or so pages, John and this Angel have sex, and Angel fills Constantine's mind with all the suffering in the world that she has witnessed. She somehow empties herself into John, which ultimately restores a bit of John's lost humanity at the apparent cost of Angel's life. When they are done, the motel room walls seem to have collapsed, and Angel is dead. But John, he feels rejuvenated. He kisses Angel on the forehead and says, Thank you, Angel. I think you might have saved my soul. As John leaves and walks, he almost smiles, and he thinks to himself, well, the world's still a vicious, ugly place, full of sad souls battling the shitstorm to survive, but I'm in touch with it again. I'm drunk with a fervent adolescent passion for human justice. John, with the realization, continues and says, God damn it, it's true. I care about these imbeciles again. I even care about myself. So, where do we go from here? A woman wandering the street. She was one of the women we saw in a diner earlier that Angel affected. Well, her son is missing, and she touches John and asks if he'll help her find him. And John happily will. He says, you know what they say, love? A trouble shared is a trouble halved. Or some of bollocks like that. Let's go look for him together. And with this, we end the Horrorist and Volume 2 of Hellblazer. Alright, so that was Volume 2. Let me go through my thoughts on this one. The first issue, Sex and Death, I thought was really trippy and weird. Constantine traveling the astral plane and Nergal chasing after him. And I thought it was pretty cool, although a little confusing maybe and convoluted what was going on. Then we had the Newcastle issue where we see what finally happened all those years ago. And I thought that was pretty entertaining to see what went down and how things blew up and went horribly and the effect it had on everyone. Then we had the issue where Constantine and this Nergal finally square off, and I thought that was really entertaining, and it was a good climax to that whole storyline that has been building up over the last trade paperback, and I thought it ended in a semi-satisfactory way, although, Nergal, John battling in cyberspace, kind of interesting, I suppose. But yeah, I thought that was good. Then we had the aftermath of that in this On the Beach issue, which I did not really love. It's just kind of like a whole dream sequence issue, and John figuring out his psyche, and maybe it was kind of a filler issue. We had the annual, which I did not really love. It was just a long story arc dealing with John's supposed ancestor, Constantine, in King Arthur times, and it didn't seem super relevant to what was going on in the main present day storyline there. And then we had the 2-issue, the Horrorist storyline, which actually was published originally in 1995, where all these other issues were published in the late 80s. So it came out much later, and maybe John's characterization was more different in the mid-90s, but it was collected in the trade paperback here to kind of fill it out, and maybe it didn't fit perfectly here, as John was characterized a little bit different. He was seemingly a little bit darker than maybe where we were in the previous issues with John. I thought it was an intriguing story arc with this Horrorist character, this little girl that's really messed up and inflicts her pain on others. I did not think it was a really fun storyline, though. It was kind of depressing, but I think there was a lot of artistic merit there that Jamie Delano was trying to explore through John within that story arc. So there is some interesting stuff to take from it. So yeah, I'm a little bit mixed on this volume. Some things I liked, some things I didn't. I'm going to give this volume a 7.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I will be back in the future with Volume 3.